this rain will clear into the North Sea by late morning. It will also be a wet start in south-east England, but rain will clear later, quickly turning dry across London with some brighter skies. Many places will stay dry, bright and breezy throughout Monday, with particularly strong winds across northern England and southern Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. GB News understands that officers of the 1922 committee will meet tomorrow amid growing calls from Tory MPs for the Prime Minister to step down. The committee's executive can change the rules of leadership balloting and no confidence voting, which could lead to a leadership challenge. Today, 3 Tory MPs publicly called for Liz Truss to step down. Crispin Blunt, Andrew Bridgen and Jamie Wallace are all urging her to go. Mr Blunt says Ms Truss should be replaced with a leadership team based around Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Jeremy Hunt. The Labour Party is urging the Prime Minister to explain her economic plans in Parliament tomorrow. It comes after Liz Truss's new Chancellor signalled his intention to reverse her economic vision by raising taxes and cutting spending. Ms Truss met Jeremy Hunt in Chequers earlier today to work on a new budget. Sir Keir Starmer says the current government is, quote, the biggest threat to family finances. Just Stop Oil protesters have vandalised an Aston Martin showroom in central London. Demonstrators sat on Park Lane, some gluing themselves to the road, while another sprayed orange paint over the outside of the building. The group is demanding the government halts all new oil and gas licences. Extinction Rebellion also staged a demonstration earlier, marching in Parliament Square. It comes as the Home Secretary announced plans to crack down on protests that cause serious disruption and threaten public safety. Suella Braverman says police will be given new powers to take a more proactive approach, specifically targeting tactics used by some climate activists. The government is pushing ahead with new legislation to ensure minimum service levels are maintained during transport strikes. Unions criticise the move, which they say will be unworkable. The measures are expected to come into force next year. Travel expert Simon Calder says there are practical problems that need to be worked out.
If you say, right, we're going to run 40% of trains, who decides which ones those are, and who decides who's allowed to go on them, because they're all going to fill up. So there's lots of problems associated with it. And as you were saying, it's not going to come until next year anyway, if it gets through a very divided Parliament. And it will be interesting to see how it does work and whether you can actually do this.
You're watching the People's Channel on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. Time now for GB News' Headliners.
Hello, I'm Josh Howie and welcome to Headliners. First-time viewers should know that I'm an intellectual powerhouse. Long-time viewers will know that everyone else is probably sick. Joining me tonight are the before and after pictures of my future hair transplant, Steve N. Allen and Scott Capurro. I'll leave you to guess which one is which. But first, let's get these front pages out of the way. We're going to start with the Daily Mail and plot to topple Truss this week. This is obviously something that's going to be dragging on and stopping the government from actually getting on with any work. Also, very good news, there is a Queen Elizabeth II tea towel, only £1 for 3 months. I don't know if that's daily, so that's a £90 tea towel. That's pretty expensive, but she was worth it. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Mordaunt, we need stability, not a soap opera. Well, that's true, but that is what you're unfortunately giving us. Also, there's a picture there of Daniel Craig looking pretty good in a suit. Someone should maybe consider him for Bond. And on to The Guardian. Truss fights for survival as Tory rebel MPs warn that game is up. Well, exactly whose game is up? I think the Tories. And Met failings let corrupt police stay on force. Now to the Mirror. Tory MPs quit now. I'm not sure if they're talking to all Tory MPs or to one particular one. And Davina, the menopause revolution, how to embrace midlife. That's interesting. I didn't know Davina had been through the menopause. She never mentions it, just like I don't mention I'm Jewish. Anyway, on to the Times. We have Tories hold secret talks on crowning new leader. There's also a picture of a dog. Well done, the Times. Vaccine for cancer by 2030. Well, that gets a little thing on the side, but the dog gets about twice that amount of space. Let's see where they put their importance. Daily Express, D-Day for PM. Will more U-turns save our economy? I'm definitely getting some kind of trend here from our newspapers. And also they're covering the cancer vaccine within a decade, which is great news. And finally, we have the Daily Star. King to flog off Queen's horses. What an excellent headline. And that is all of our stories. We are going to kick off with the front page of The Guardian, and Truss seems to have lost all trust, Scott.
It says here that Truss fights for survival as Tory rebel MPs warn that the game is up.
Ooh.
She's done, and they're meeting tomorrow, even though they say they're not, they are. And they say they're not plotting. Rishi says he's not involved in any of this. He is. He's meeting with them tomorrow. I think the 1922 committee is also meeting, and they're all going to find somebody else. Although who would want the job, I have no idea. They're pitching a combination platter of Hunt, Mordaunt, and Sunak, which is it's a very rough and busy political three-way. I don't know who's going to be the loudest or talk the fastest, but all of them want the job. And whether or not they can all work together, I have no idea. Jeremy Hunt ran for the leader. He ran for prime minister, and he was the lowest. He got the worst numbers in his party. So he's not popular in his party. He's not popular in Scotland. He's terribly unpopular in Northern Ireland because of past experience. And Wales doesn't know who he is. So I think England had better buck up, because I think he's going to get it. He's going to, I mean, they've given him the responsibility of the economy. He basically said that she, gave me a fresh slate to start all over. He claims to be in power, basically. And he's, it's hard for me to say this, but he's a better speaker than she is.
And you think that's what it comes down to?
I kind of think that her press conference, was it Friday, was those 8 minutes were just such a disaster. She spent more time circling the room like she was going to leap on someone and bite their neck. I have no idea what she was doing. She needs to eat some greens, get outdoors, stop wearing the vampire dress. She needs to have some people tell her, you're okay, Liz, it's all right. It's just been such a, I don't feel bad for any politician. She's been in the, she's been in the cabinet for 12 years, but I feel as though she's been sacrificed far too immediately, far too quickly, without giving obviously any chance at all to push forward her terrible economic program. But it was bad before that too. I mean, Boris, it was terrible then. This has been sliding downhill for years. So.
Steve, there's a poll out today that suggests that 10 cabinet ministers would lose their seats if in the next election. I mean, how desperate do you think they are at the moment?
Well, this is why they can't risk having a general election. I mean, Nadine Dorries suggested one, which is a weird time to suggest. When you're behind in the polls, then you definitely lose. But maybe it's more to get a good tweet. That tends to be a main MO. Yeah, it's a tricky time, isn't it? And I almost feel sorry for Liz Truss, because this does seem like... No, even people who thought this wasn't going to go well didn't predict it was going to go this badly. So it does. You have to. Maybe you don't feel that sorry for it. No, it is.
She's completely not suited for the job. Why she thought she was, I have no idea. These people's egos are huge. She put the future of this country at risk and turned the economy of the UK into an international laughingstock. Even Joe Biden, who is no economist, has commented negatively on her choices. He said, I wouldn't have done it, but that's Great Britain. They're doing what they need to do. But an American president almost never comments on the policy of the country.
Indeed, even Mark Dolan has now abandoned Liz, so
he's turned back.
You definitely know it's over for her when Mark leaves you.
Apparently, there's been an estimated poll that says a projected 1997-style landslide for Labour, with the party winning 411 seats. So, of course, and that means also Jacob Rees-Mogg, Jeremy Hunt, and Theresa Coffey all losing their seats.
This also feeds into my theory that Liz Truss is still a Lib Dem and is an undercover agent sent in to work way up the ranks to destroy the Tories from the inside.
Mission accomplished. On to Monday's Telegraph, and this week's Chancellor has a new tactic for keeping their job, Steve.
Yes, well, I mean, you don't have to keep it for long to be doing well these days. They get through them so fast. It's pretty... this
He's going to get the pension anyway.
Yeah, this week's special guest Chancellor is Jeremy Hunt, which is terrible for us broadcasters. It's a risky name. You'll never work again. But, so he's been saying that that Liz Truss is still in charge. Come on. If he resigns, there would be such catastrophe. So he's got power. So any of these policies that come in, they're coming from Jeremy. This is not like, I'm doing what Liz says. So the idea is to try and cut some more spending, and there's going to be a lovely response to this, because some people will be like, good, there should be less government spending. Then you read the article, and in some of the articles they mention, one of the areas is the Ministry of Defence. People will be like, no, I like the army having more money. So you've got to pick your sides. But most of this article talks about NHS spending. It's another go at Jeremy Hunt having a go at the NHS. Let's see what happens. Unfinished business for him. He keeps calling them in the article more efficiencies, which is one of the best euphemisms.
Well, that's what I was going to say was Scott, the chief executive of the NHS Confederation, he says you can't make cuts without impacting patient care. Do you think it's possible for them to make any cuts?
I mean, they can make cuts, but what he's saying is there'll be more waiting lists. There'll be fewer people seen. And I think that the NHS is still recovering from the pandemic, and I don't think that they have as much as they would like to recover. I think also that, Jeremy Hunt's career, he was a quiet backbencher at Solon, sitting back there saying nothing, and now he's the most powerful politician in the country. That's how ridiculous this melodrama has become. And people don't even know what they're meant to believe, and I think what people are most concerned with is the winter approaching, cold flu season, more pandemic, NHS being cut, people dying in their homes, and I don't see any reassurances from the Tory party whatsoever.
The NHS is in such a bad state as well. I've been on this show talking about this weird lump thing on my hand that I want to get looked at, and I'm still waiting for the phone call about it.
It's called a finger, mate.
Then it's grown in a weird place. The only way I'm going to see a GP is if I call up this morning when they do that feature. That's the only chance you get. It's the best way to do it.
And that means you've got to wake up early.
Yeah, so I'm not doing that.
Sorry about that. Sticking with the Telegraph, and looks like Truss isn't going to be shopping at Tesco's anytime soon, Scott.
Well, no, apparently John Allen, the Tesco boss, who in the past has criticised the Labour policies, but he's a city veteran, and they go to him for economic upcomings. And he was never a fan of Jeremy Corbyn's. He thinks that the Labour Party has made themselves more mainstream, has moved more toward the centre, and he's praising Labour now. He's saying it's the only game in town. That's his quote. It's the only party with a plausible growth plan, is what he feels. And I guess, you know, he's a very powerful, rich man, and he's providing the country with some pretty, you know, unedible food. But in the meantime, he's making us believe that maybe Labour might have a chance.
I mean, that's it. I mean, Steve, do you think Labour have this plausible plan, or is it just the fact that they can't do any worse?
Yes, their plan is not as bad as what we don't really know what Liz Truss's plan is, and that was part of the problem. We didn't get the details.
Well, we knew it. And we just got turned out to be pretty bad.
But if they'd have shown some workings out, then that would have been, you know, get the Office of Budget Responsibility, and it would have been a different thing. This, to me, strikes me as, when you start to get the canary in the coal mine that business is not liking the Conservative Party, if you're not trusting the Tories on the economy, what's your main reason for voting that way? I think we also have to admit, though, that this is about Tesco, and Tesco needs people who can afford food. That's their business model. It's like Henry Ford, that quote about you can get robots to build cars, but at the end of the day, robots don't need to buy cars. You've got to have people still buying the product.
Well, I want to hear what Sainsbury's has to say about this. On to Monday's Sun, and Sleepy Joe has woken up in a bit of a mood from his most recent nap, Steve.
Yeah, it's what Scott was talking about. He's passed some comment on Liz Truss, saying that Liz Truss's economic plan was a predictable mistake. I mean, it's difficult to argue that it wasn't predictable, because we could run the clips of Rishi Sunak saying, oh, I'll tell you what happens if Liz gets in, word for word, getting him right. So it's definitely predictable. Also, was it a mistake? Well, I mean, in the quote, he says that he wasn't the only one who thought the Prime Minister had blundered. I mean, surely even she does. Firing your Chancellor isn't a sign of thinking, I am getting this word perfect. But the article in The Sun calls him meddling. It's one of those where they drop in the words just because he's saying a thing they don't like. Because down the actual quote is from Joe Biden, I think the idea of cutting taxes to the super wealthy at a time when, anyway, I just think I disagree with the policy, but that's up to Great Britain to make that judgment, not me.
It's very succinct.
But RPMs have said the same kind of things about gun policy after a shooting, and the newspapers wouldn't call them meddling. Because look, that bit, it's up to Great Britain, their judgment, not me. It's not really meddling. It's just passing a comment that everyone seems to agree with.
Again, I think it's just very rare for any American politician to comment on policies in a country other than their own. It's really unusual.
So why do you think he did it?
I think that he's trying to reestablish what he thinks is a powerful relationship with the UK. But I also think that he wants to be in charge of what's going on here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's made it really clear that he wants American business to move more into the EU, and he wants expansionist economic policies, which I think a lot of Americans support.
I think he wants you back under his wing.
Oh.
I think that's what it's all about.
That's a sweet idea, isn't it?
Back under...
He fell off his bike, though. I don't want to hold on to Daddy. He's going to hurt my bones.
I mean, there's an argument that he's being a little bit of a hypocrite, because the tax rates in the UK, to get this 45% tax rate, you've got to earn £50,000. That's a lot of money. But in America, it's 37%, and you have to earn £500,000 to get to that rate. So for him to sort of turn around and start talking about our taxes when they've got ridiculously low taxes...
He may be prepping for the UK, too, because the interest rates in this country are about to grow to about 6%, which they will be in the US in about a month and a half. I think they're going to match one another. And we've been warned by Hunt already that that's in the making. So I think he's just kind of laying the ground for that, too. He wants people to know that things are going to get difficult on both sides of the Atlantic, maybe.
Yeah, well, I've used up all of my intellectual powers. We still got one more story, quite a big one. Let's see if we get through it. Finishing the section with Monday's Financial Times. And contrary to UK politics, in China, their leaders seem to last quite a long time, Scott.
Yes, Xi Jinping is about to go into his third election. Usually after 2 elections, 10 years total, they leave office. He thinks he's going to win the next, and probably the next. They expect him to
Would they win anything? I mean, they sort of enforce that. If they win
well, they have 98 million voters apparently in the party, so he thinks he's going to accomplish that. Sweeping win by 80%, that's what he says.
Yeah, I think they've already filled out the ballots.
They might have.
Possibly.
And if they haven't, he's going to kill their family. But also, 97 million members. Also, he's concerned with Taiwan, and I think that he's made China less free, and he's made Hong Kong much less free. And I think he's saying to Taiwan, look, you're Chinese. We say what goes on in Taiwan, no one else. That's what he said. He did. It was a 2-hour speech he did, which again is quite long for
I'm
anyone.
impressed.
Yeah,
better than Truss.
Yeah,
8 minutes. You can't even do the 8 minutes.
That's one Edinburgh show, isn't it? And he stood up to I think a lot of politicians around him, not in the higher echelon near him, but at a slightly lower level, and local politicians are struggling to promote his policies because people got used to a bit of freedom, a bit of spending, and a bit of this and that, and they got used to not worrying about Taiwan, and he's putting Taiwan ahead of everything else right now. I think he's trying to establish some sort of strength or power over the U.S., some sort of dominance, both financially and politically as well.
Well, it's kind of scary, Steve. I mean, is it all talk when it comes to Taiwan, or could this actually be some kind of flashpoint for World War III?
Well, I mean, there's a gap in between those two. It doesn't have to just be all talk or World War III.
Steve, at GB News, it's one or the other.
Is it nonsense or war? We've only got 2 graphics.
And you've got 1 minute. Go.
I would say, things are going to heat up with this issue with Taiwan, mainly with America, though. So I think maybe, who knows whether we just back off a little and calm down. Although, in this thing, they also talk about how they are doubling down on this zero COVID policy. So if anything could keep them busy for a while, it might be that.
Yeah, could you explain the zero COVID policy to anybody who's got COVID at the moment?
They're going for no COVID.
No COVID.
So,
complete lockdown in some cities. People have been in and out of lockdowns for the last 3 years. Their lives have been completely pulled apart. They've had no contact with their families. They haven't been to work. Their communities have been almost dismantled. And he's 69, and he thinks he's got another 10 more strong years to wipe out COVID completely. That's another one of his goals.
Well, the interesting thing here that in the Financial Times, there's a bit where they talk about how the Chinese government have hindered the efforts to investigate the origins of COVID. Now, that's the first time I've really seen in a national newspaper openly talking about the possibility, or at least alluding to the fact that it could well have come from a lab. Whereas before there seemed to be very much a narrative that it was all about markets. The fact they seem to be talking about this, do you think that that's possibly part of a wider movement of people now accepting that that's a possibility?
No, I still think they're just...
Well, the Financial Times...
Yeah, but I think the Financial Times are just pointing and saying, look, they don't like information coming out. I don't think they are saying, oh, this was some sort of creative thing. I mean, they didn't do it very well. If China created it in a lab, they've done themselves a right mischief.
Well, they've done the whole world a mischief.
Well, I know, sadly, we'll never know, really, because they lock down so much on news and on information getting out. But also, it may have done someone like this leader a service. I mean, to lock down a country so effectively, you're in complete control, much more so than you were
You've
before.
made a lot of conspiracy theorists very happy there. OK, that's all for part 1. Coming up in part 2, we've got the GB News bingo. Trans, more trans, IRA, Islamophobia, and Prince Andrew.
Woo!
See you in 2. Woohoo, bingo!
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Josh Howie, and they haven't managed to escape yet, Stephen Allen and Scott Capurro. Let's crack on. Now, Monday's Daily Mail, and I guess in the future, doctors taking a medical will be leaving out one very important question, Steve.
Yes, the Daily Mail says that trainee doctors are told not to quiz patients on transgender status. I don't think this means working out any of the original statistics. Like, I don't think this is going to end up with a biologically born woman having a vasectomy. If that was your worry, that is your worry, but don't worry about that.
Am I still going to be able to get, like, examined properly? Am I going to get the old, 50 years old, now I go in and get my little test?
Not necessarily by a doctor.
I know a guy.
Which
test are we talking about in 59? Which one have I missed? Where the disco ball comes down and the music starts?
Whoa.
That one?
Is that when your whole life changes?
That's when it changes.
So now it's 3/4 of UK medical schools have signed this charter, which promotes trainee medics respecting and affirming the patient's status on transgender. Which actually means don't question it, which falls into this trap of presuming that someone asking a question is always the same thing. Now, if someone asking a question as a trained medical person is very different to someone online using some rhetorical question to throw hate. They're different.
Have you been following me on Twitter?
I can't help it. The algorithm throws it at me. But we shouldn't mix them up, because doctors asking questions, that's how stuff works in medicine. Asking about stuff, getting more information is not the same as, oh, I bet you think this, which is online hate. They shouldn't mix them up. There's a huge difference between that trainee doctor...
Or online hate, a.k.a. people fighting for women's rights, but whatever. But I know what you're saying.
No, but I'm trying to say the reason the argument to be said for, you shouldn't ask questions, would be, because you might be trying to convert someone, which someone online might be. But you are absolutely safe if a medical trained professional is asking a question to ascertain greater information. You don't want to stop doctors asking questions, because that's also how things are found out, by asking questions. Plus side, no chance of seeing a doctor these days anyway, so maybe don't worry about it.
OK, that's the
Is that a plus side?
What about you, Scott?
Well, when I see in these articles LGBTQ stuff, I realize that is apparently a community within which I belong. But I really hate that they're scripting doctors on how to behave with patients. Because like you said, it's a really intimate, particular relationship you have with your doctor, and I don't want my doctor ever to feel like, I can't ask that, or I have to promote that, or I have to support you in this way. I want them to honestly tell me what's going on with me. And this leads to, I think this is going to just be terrible. I mean, when I was a kid, speaking to my doctor was really great. I trusted him, and I thought that he understood who I was and what I was getting at. And now to think that I would go to a doctor if I were a teenager and I was having problems, and that doctor would feel limited in what they could ask me. It ruins the whole relationship. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
But I think also there's, maybe this is what you're about to talk about, Steve, but there's additional dangers, arguably, that if you can't question people's status, when they say they're trans, certainly with children, there's evidence now that I believe there's a lot of their possible underlying features. Autism is meant to be a big...
Or they must be gay.
And also being gay. And so just to go down this affirmative route action, and I think someone from Transgender Trend, Jane Galloway, said that this is... has accused the medical schools of falling into a trap.
That wasn't what I was going to say. I was going to do
I want you to talk about what I'm saying.
I'll come back to that after. I was going to do
then you say what you say.
A really glib comment about the fact that it's doctors and dentists who've signed up for this, and my dentist don't go anywhere near down there. Maybe she's doing it wrong.
I wish I hadn't actually mentioned my comment now, because yours was so much better.
It sticks to the back.
But what do you think about this? Do you think that this is the medical schools being slightly conned?
I think that was kind of my original point, that they're whether it's the doctors falling into the trap, it probably is, falling into the trap of allowing doctors to be considered the same as people who be controlling or bringing hate or trying to do conversion therapy. You can separate them out, as I think we've all agreed. Doctors need to be able to ask questions.
Yeah, and doctors want to heal people.
Yeah.
Is a big thing. On to Monday's Times and Scott. Looks like teachers taking the register wrong could cost them their job.
In the Times, primary teacher to fight legal case after refusal to call female pupil by boy's name. The teacher was suspended for several weeks last autumn after refusing to use male pronouns and a male name for a pupil who'd been placed in her for a year 4 class. And it's been a teacher in Virginia was fired for this in the U.S. and an Irish teacher was fired also because, again, these teachers are refusing to give in to what this current trend is. Last September, in this article, the teacher was told by the school's head teacher that a pupil in her year 4 class wanted to be known as a boy's name, and she wanted to talk to the student about it. And it became difficult, and they parted ways. The teacher got a lawyer, sued the school, and the school said, you can keep your job, but you and that student can never have any contact again. So they took her out of her class. And the student themselves had admitted to their co-students that they were, I think that she was born a girl. And so that created all sorts of controversies among the kids. They didn't understand it. They wanted to talk to somebody
how old
about
are these
it.
kids?
They're year 4. And these kids...
8 years old, is that
yes.
right? Yeah.
And these kids went to the teacher and said, we're confused. Can you explain this to us? And she's like, I can't talk to you about this. You have to talk to someone else. And then the parents got involved. And so the parents wanted to know what the teacher said to the kids. And so, you know what I mean? So it became this melodrama that it didn't have to be if the teacher had just been allowed to call the girl by the girl's name. But again, that's a problem, isn't it? Because this child is identified in a certain way, and again, it's not going to get rid of any of the confusion amongst the students. That's really the problem, I think. Is the kids don't know where to turn now. Who do they talk to? Who do they ask? You know? And the parents are kind of panicking because they're wondering what's going on at the school. Why are we dealing with and no one knows what to say. So,
I mean, do we have another big court case on our hands, like the Mayor Forstater case here? Do you think, Steve?
I don't know. I was reading this and it brought memories of an interview, a Jordan Peterson interview. So quoting that on...
Wow, you watched Jordan Peterson.
Everyone's going to be right at it. But there was a bit... It was back in the day when it was the legal thing in Canada about being forced to use the pronouns that someone wants.
Yep, still going on.
So this is different because pronouns... This is actually a name. It's a proper noun, as well as, I presume, pronouns. But he made the point of saying that he wouldn't want to be legally compelled to use certain words. But you would tend to call someone what they want to be called out of politeness. So I don't know where that fits into.
We're talking about an 8-year-old, though.
Yeah, but if
what they want.
The thing is, people change their names all the time, and people change their identifiers all the time. And what you might have, the way you might have identified a minority community, what seems to be a minority community 20 years ago, is different from what you may call those people now because they want to be called something differently. And you respect their boundaries and their limitations and you call them what they like. So this child would like to be called this one name. I really don't see a problem with it. Kids dress up, kids have fantasies, kids fall in love with other kids, gender or no, without even wondering what their gender is. So I feel as though this teacher was fighting a losing battle, especially because the head teacher of the school sent around some information to the adults, books to read, to kind of inform them what was going on without naming names. So I think the head teacher was kind of stepping in, trying to kind of, make it a smooth transition for everyone. And this teacher brought a lawyer in, which is always difficult.
Monday's Mail now. And what do you sing when you're drunk at Dublin Airport?
Not this.
Not this, really?
Video showing
Even
passengers...
if you're really drunk?
Well, that's why I don't drink so much these days, maybe. Passengers, and it's a large group of passengers, which is important because large groups tend to act worse as well.
Yeah, the mob.
But at Dublin Airport, singing some pro-IRA chants.
Do you want to do a rendition?
No.
Sure, come on.
It turns out I'm not available for that at any price. But it was a large group of people. It was filmed. Now, politicians have condemned it, rightly so, because of the poor taste of it, regardless of your thoughts of what you'd like that nation to do.
Doesn't matter how catchy it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what a great beat it might have or not. This would be disrespectful to those who have lost their lives because of terrorism. So surely we know where we stand on that. But the politicians have said they're worried that this is normalising this behaviour and they're seeing more of this. I'm not sure that's the correct interpretation. It's easier to film stuff. like big bunches of drunk people do stuff that you just normally see and ignore. Relatively recently, we were looking at a news story that looked at the demographics of people who don't identify either side. Because they're younger.
Talk about the trans issue again, or
no?
Different plural.
Because they were born since all of this has not been such an issue. So I'm not sure the interpretation is to see more sectarian issues just because more things are filmed. It's easier to see them. It's right to condemn it, but let's not extrapolate too far to saying this is society crumbling, where I'm not sure.
But this isn't a one-off incident, though, is it, Scott? I mean, we had the women's Republic of Ireland women's football team on camera singing the same song.
The Irish are naughty. And I would love to hear this song, because I want to hear how you rhyme words like, you know, with the IRA are involved in. How do you rhyme things like drug trafficking and human trafficking? I'd like to hear how they rhyme those.
Kneecapping, was it?
There's that too.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's just homophobia and bigotry. I'd like to hear how they rhyme those words when they're singing about the IRA. It's amazing. That's hilarious.
But I wouldn't necessarily want to get off the plane in Dublin
at
walking
all.
through the airport. That's a very beautiful city, but walking through the airport and singing everybody sing that would make me not necessarily feel that welcome.
So much cocaine there in Dublin. Maybe that's why they're singing.
Think about your last weekend of gigs there. The Metro now, and it must be nice for Prince Andrew to know he still has at least one friend, isn't it, Scott?
Ghislaine.
We're going to get there in the end.
Ghislaine Maxwell breaks silence about her dear friend, Prince Andrew. She's a disgraced socialite, as you may know, and she's been put in jail for 20 years she's never going to get out. They're going to kill her. And she's in there, I think she's begging for help, really. This is a cry for help.
Oh, yeah.
She says that she feels bad for the Duke of York, that he was a dear friend of hers, and she understands why they no longer have contact.
Do you think he's going to get in his helicopter and fly over and she'll be in the
Swoop
yard?
her up like an action hero.
Put together
lower the rope, drag her up. I think that she is... she says, I follow what's happening to him. She says, he's paying such a price for the association with Jeffrey Epstein. Is he really? I don't think he's paying any price. I think she's paying the price. I think he's not paid any price whatsoever.
I was going to say, that's a very good point, which you may be about to make, Steve, about the fact that for this child sex ring, only one person's actually serving time in prison, and it's a woman.
He's back in public service, actually, and if you saw the Queen's funeral, and all these men apparently some men were misbehaving while people were waiting in line to see the Queen's box. And why should these men locally act any differently from Andrew, her own son? Of course they're misbehaving, just like he did. And yet, we're meant to be happy that he's back on our screen.
Whereas I wasn't going to say anything as insightful as both of you went for. You said he wasn't paying a price. I was just going to drop 12 million in there. But
then I believe his mum paid it.
Yeah.
So, Mommy paid. Mommy wrote the check.
Yeah.
Or he held her old wizzled hand right before she
took
her last breath, got the money out of her.
Last story.
It's a strategy I'm planning for my own.
On to Monday's Times, and Scottish police seem to be very good at arresting women for fighting for their biological rights, but not so good at protecting Muslim scholars, Steve.
You can crowbar that in on any story, can't you?
I've got a skill. I've got a gift.
So this Muslim scholar in Scotland claims to be living under fatwa, says the police have failed to investigate, and says that's because they are worried about being accused of Islamophobia. It's also worth thinking about maybe they're just not good at their jobs. Before we throw around the I word, maybe they're just not good at investigating.
I think that's a much better accusation.
Either way.
They genuinely, I think, would at the moment rather be accused of being rubbish at their jobs than being Islamophobic. That's the state that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, because at least they could just blame that on, funding.
Oh, yeah, I'm just really bad.
But they were charged with investigating whether this fatwa was still in place. Kind of seems important to know. You'd want to know rather than just, let's...
I want to see if you can go down the shops.
Yeah.
You go to the water world.
I guess I'll find out. I'll pop down the shop. Yeah. So the investigation didn't really find much. I mean, the Muslim cleric also angered clerics by publishing texts that were perceived to be disparaging of the Prophet Muhammad. It's that old chestnut again. I know we would probably end up disagreeing as the sciencey atheist that I am. I see religion as playing problematic roles in certain places, and this is one of those, isn't it? Look at that. You can't say a thing without being sensitive.
If you care about what other people are saying about your particular thing, you know what I mean? Like, that's the difference, I think. But, Scott, I mean, the police, I read the article, they actually consulted in the end the Islamic community for their advice, rather than kind of seemingly going in and saying, is this going on, is this not? I mean, their advice would be nice, What about asking, hello, Have you got a fatwa on this guy?
But if there is a fatwa on him, of course these mosques are going to deny it. So I don't see the point of sending the police in at all. This guy needs to get a James Bond type character in there. He needs a spy or somebody to infiltrate these mosques and find out how much danger he's actually in. The thing I'm thinking is maybe he's not in any danger. Maybe he's made the fatwa up. Maybe he's just trying to sell books or hand out pamphlets, or he wants a new wife. I don't know. Maybe he wants a better house. Maybe he thinks, they can move him somewhere that's pretty.
Maybe he's going to sue GB News. That's it for part 2. Join us after the break, where I reach my comfort zone with the stupidest stories, like political porn stars, cannibals, and some truly terrifying news. Crocs are back. See you in 2.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Headliners with me. Oh, yeah, you don't care who I am. Call me Bald Guy, joined by Stephen Allen and Scott Capurro. Unless you guys want some nicknames as well?
No, because I think I know what you do.
What am I going to do?
Same thing about the hair.
Other Bald Guy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Not even
My nickname is Cappy.
Cappy. Okay, why?
When I was on a tennis team with a lot of old ladies when I was in high school.
And that is your genuine nickname?
And they said, oh, there's a Scot on the team, we're going to call you Cappy. So that's, yeah.
There we are. Okay. Well, okay. That's what I'm going to call you.
Old ladies like me. What can I say?
Okay, tennis with old ladies.
Yeah.
Well, you raised just so you could win.
Yeah, they made me feel sexy. They did.
Okay, that's where it all started. Good to know. Let's start with Monday's Guardian. And does China want us to die, Scott?
Well, maybe. China bans fruity vapes, which is also my drag name. But
those old ladies come up with that as well. Hey, fruity vapes.
Oh, if only they were alive. Hey, fruity vapes, go get the balls. But not their export to the UK. Popular disposable brand will still send products to Britain, but they are denying them from their own population. They're flavored e-cigarettes. I know nothing about this stuff. I only smell it. Don't really know what it is. But they're fruity and sweety, and they cannot be sold on the domestic Chinese market. But they will still manufacture them and send them and ship them around the world.
That's thoughtful, isn't it? That's nice.
It's kind of like it reminded me of ammunition bullets in Britain, because Britain's the second largest producer of bullets in the world. I looked it up this year. The industry will be worth $3.3 billion. But the British are so cautious and wimpy about using bullets themselves.
Wow. I was going to call China hypocrites, but
I know.
Now I have to aim at us.
I mean, there's a lot of debts you could cancel with just a couple of bullets and a really good little pocket gun. Seriously. Take my word for it.
Okay, that's why you moved away from America.
There's a warrant.
Started to enjoy it too much.
But yeah, so the Chinese can't enjoy their little fruity vapes anymore.
Vapes.
It's terrible.
We should get rid of vapes.
Oh, well, this is what I can ask. Do you think that we should ban these vapes anyway over here as well?
Maybe the fruity ones. I'll tell you what bothers me.
Specifically the fruity ones, not the cancerous ones.
The ones that are nice, but they're probably all... they're not as bad as smoking, but they're not good for you either. Oh, let's breathe in this chemical.
It's terrible.
But what I don't like about the fruity ones, it reminds me of that era in the 90s when the Alco Pops came out. When I was young, when we wanted to learn how to get drunk, you had to drink something that tasted terrible, and then they invented a nice thing for the kids. No, same for smoking. Now you can, as a young person, get into smoking using a fruity e-vape. It's not.
And heroin would like kill you back in the day.
Yeah, but now it tastes like chocolate. It's delicious. My father was involved in all that, actually. It's weird to say. Yeah, my dad worked
Alco Pops.
No, well, kind of. He worked for an alcohol and beer distribution company in the U.S., and he and his team came up with this idea for this wine called Annie Green Springs, and this was like this apple wine, seriously, with a screw top cap. And that's why they market it towards young people, because they get unscrewed between classes and take a slug and they go to class.
So
Brilliant, genius.
I mean, your father probably increased teenage pregnancy single-handedly across
Yeah, but
the
this
US.
look doesn't just happen. This is...
Oh, is that from drinking... This
is French piano lessons in private school.
Oh,
no,
I see. Sorry, I thought that you were raised on this drink.
What's a couple of alcoholics if I can, do a pirouette? I'm 6'2". What's prettier to watch, really?
You,
yeah,
obviously. Monday's Times now, and Steve, seems like kids won't have the option now to not eat their vegetables.
Yes, cash-strapped shoppers ditch fruit and vegetables. It's all right, you can get a fruity e-vape. You can buy loads of them from China. But a poll of 2,000 people looked into where people have been cutting back on their spending. And people are ditching the consumption of meat and fish, that is expensive, but also cutting back on fruit and veg. And
what's left?
More so, though. They've been cutting that back more than the free
and that
meat.
The argument from Lee Anderson, that kind of argument would be, well, it's not that expensive. If you don't have a lot of money, why aren't you buying more vegetables? I think part of this you mix in when you don't have a lot of money, you need something more than just calories from your food. You need a bit of joy from something. But also, they've looked at the first one to go is apples. There's the stats on fewer apples, 15% it's dropped. And so imagine the last week of your life, then imagine it again with no apples in it. It's the same week, isn't it? Whether you ate apples or not, they're not moving the dial on what you remember, how much you enjoy life. So by the time you've done your shopping and you think, should we bother to have this fruit? Some of the fruit's are really expensive. It says £3 for some strawberries. Yeah, actually, I'd rather have the £3.
Grapes are a lot.
Grapes are.
You're dropping a lot of grape money these days?
I disagree with those apples. I do love an apple.
I do.
It has to be.
I eat a boiled apple every morning.
Boiled apple?
I poach an apple every day.
Come on.
Every day. With a bit of clove.
Did the old ladies teach you that trick?
They did. That's Cappy's Corner trick. Okay. Yeah, they're delicious and they're really good for you.
Well, isn't part of the problem, Scott, that processed food is so much cheaper? Unhealthy food.
It isn't. The thing about processed food is you're chasing a dragon. It never fills you up. You never feel like you've got what you wanted out of it. It's tempting to go up and eat more and more, and that chocolate talks to you from the other room. And those crisps, they never shut up, But you have a full meal, have some vegetables, some rice, you're full. It's weird to me.
They did invent this, though. Scientists have looked at that sweet spot. You get the correct mixture of fats and sugars, and it just hits the human, and we want more of it. And nature doesn't produce it, so that's why we overeat produced food.
It's incredibly addictive, that food.
Yeah.
OK, let's go to McDonald's. On to the Mirror. And Scott, seems like these environmentalists might be extremely lactose intolerant.
Yes. I'm sorry. Oh, there we are. Yes. Vegan protesters trash shops with milk across the UK, including Harrods and M&S.
Oh, disgusting.
No.
Don't leave our M&S alone.
I hope they're not going near my lemon curd. Lemon curd at Harrods. Oh, so
OK, environmentalists, you heard it. You want to get to Scott.
They're pouring milk products all over supermarkets, all over the country. Whole Foods, Marks & Spencer in London, Manchester, Norwich, Edinburgh, just before 12 p.m. on Saturday.
And Harrods, I'm surprised they sell milk in Harrods. Surely, if you're rich enough to shop at Harrods, you've got someone to do your shopping for you.
They sell a delicious. Well, they sell canned. It's really delicious condensed milk. It's really, really.
Are you serious? You've bought milk in Harrods?
I make cheesecake out of it all the time. It's delicious.
Wow, you are rich.
I
had no idea.
Harrods is.
That's for your father. That alcohol money.
He owns half the market.
Inherited.
I like Whole Foods and Harrods. They have a few specialty items that we do buy that we like. Just a couple of things. No, we're poor. I'm a comic, but there's one or two things they sell that the lemon curd is just.
Yeah.
And I just don't see the point of all this. People need milk. I mean, You know, I mean, there's ways to produce milk and ways not to. I mean, I drink raw milk, and raw milk is produced in a certain way that doesn't harm the cow at all, that benefits the entire community. So I think they're being a bit reactionary.
Well, I mean, is this going to make more people unsympathetic to their cause, Steve?
Possibly. I don't really enjoy that mentality of, I don't like the protest, so I'm going to go 180 on it. But have your own mind about whether you like an issue or not. I saw someone, like a famous radio presenter, tweeting about, because he has such a love of Van Gogh, that's it, I don't want climate to not change now. Pick a side and don't be swayed by just not liking the protest. However, to try and find a good side of this, I'm all about the balance.
Okay.
Because they were pouring milk all over the place, and it dawned on me that if you're in a shop and sometimes a little trolley accident, you can knock over a stand. Don't apologise and pay for the breakages. Just shout, just stop oil, and run out pretending it was a protest.
Oh, this is a very good tactic. Or maybe you could even make stealing part of your protest.
Yeah, it's a money-saving tip, yeah.
Well, good for you. Monday's independent now, and Steve, you are looking pretty tasty there.
Thank you. Yeah, this is what happens when you don't get enough fruit and veg. Survivors of the 1972 Andes flight disaster say that they have no regrets over turning to cannibalism, which I suppose is the best way to deal with the mental issues that you probably have, having eaten another person. So there was an inexperienced co-pilot who didn't work out where they were, didn't land, crashed the plane because they thought they were going to land. So you end up with the survivors trapped and eventually they'd eaten all the food, they'd drunk all the wine, they even started to try and eat the cotton in the seats, and eventually someone suggested we might need to eat some of the survivors, and I bet they wish they'd have kept some of that wine.
Some of the survivors or some of the dead?
No,
they've been dead by then. Not everyone died in the crash, though. So there would have been some people who survived the crash and then died because of the exposure, or the injuries, I suppose. And of those who survived, there's some quotes here. One of them said, of course, the idea of eating human flesh was terribly repugnant. It was hard
initially.
Hard to put in your mouth, but you got used to it. And then, this is, if you can't avoid the e-vapes or the veg. And then there's another quote of someone who was saying, the person who suggested it, some medical student, then got a piece of glass and started cutting up, saying that actually if he'd have died, he would have been honoured to have helped other people survive. Which is probably how you rationalise it, but I don't want to...
Now, you've told this whole thing, and you haven't mentioned the film Alive.
I know, the book, which is fantastic.
You've just given us the whole synopsis of what... You've seen the film Alive.
And I've read the book twice.
But did you know, in the book, did they talk about... Because I never saw the film, they talk about how they are eating brains from skulls.
Out of skulls.
They said that in the book.
They start enjoying it. It becomes a banquet. They start taking body parts and making cutlery out of the bones and fingers. Also, some of the people that survived, that were eating people, then died in an avalanche, and that's messed up, because you started eating people and then you die anyway.
Okay.
No, they look good though when they're found. They're skinny, but they look good.
Although, I definitely know which view I'd eat. No offence.
Well, thank you.
And you know where you begin when you're eating somebody, right?
I'm great.
No,
He's way too sinewy. He's probably doing it deliberately.
No, you know where
you're getting your teeth.
You know where to begin when you're eating somebody, just so you know.
Where do you butt?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the glutes.
Definitely not starting
fatty area.
Okay. Let's lighten the mood after cannibalism. Scott, with the Telegraph having a sweet story about the fate of our favourite bear.
Well, more than 1,000 Paddington bear tributes to Queen Elizabeth II have been donated to charity. We can all sleep peacefully at night knowing this. I was worried about those bears, but they've all been given...
They've been cleaned, haven't they?
They've been brainwashed like the rest of the country about her, and they've been given to Barnardo's Children's Services, of which Her Majesty was a patron until 2016, when it was passed on to the Duchess of Evil, also known as his wife. So she's manning it now. Because she looks like a guy. And so she's got all the little dolls or whatever they are. She's giving them to kids that she doesn't know and saying, now, here they are. Now get away. Get away. She's throwing them from her carriage at the little monsters. Here, meatloafs, here you go. So that's a beautiful story.
The way you tell it. Beautiful.
Yeah, this is a good thing. They're going to give this to charity, but I thought they're kind of missing a trick. They really should have sold these on eBay. Because remember those wristbands that were on the queue? Those were selling for like hundreds, thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Surely these bears would have sold for a load of dosh.
Pay down the debt a little bit, yeah. Is no one ever going to point out she met him once? Why is the most synonymous person with the late Queen Paddington? Also, didn't meet him. That's a great clip off the internet as well, where someone says, actually, it was all done in CGI.
What?
No.
Really? Excuse me. La, 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 la. Thank you very much there. You have really broken my heart.
But Buckingham Palace, there's a gay bar behind there. I think it's still there, where a lot of bears do go and hang out and talk about the royals. It's great.
Thank you very much. Scott Capurro there, available for children's parties with no Paddington. Monday's Mail, and Steve, looks like those Yanks finally have a better option to understand us than watching Mary Poppins.
Yeah, this is the worst idea I've ever read in a newspaper. US diplomats learn our ways from watching Gogglebox. Channel 4 TV show is used as an unofficial training
They haven't started war with us.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? So what, they think we're all really annoying extroverts? Because that's all you get on that show. The staff in the embassy in Nine Elms have been advised to watch the show in their spare time to understand us. All these Brits do is sit around and watch TV. Actually, no, that is...
As an annoying extrovert, I take great offence.
Of course you do. And I'm sure I'll hear about it all day.
Yeah.
But someone from the US State Department spokesperson was told to watch the show and said it's a great way to get perspectives that you don't hear in London. The article then goes through and looks at what some of these Americans working there think about the show. I am not going to sit here and talk about someone talking about a show where people watch another TV show and expect people to watch it.
This is too postmodern. This is post-post. It's gone...
Like 4 Russian dolls.
We're in the Matrix now.
I mean, it's odd to me, too, that they don't just go to Starbucks around the corner and meet some British people and talk to them. That's all you really have.
So, I mean, what I was going to say, when you first came over, do you wish you had some kind of show? How did you fit into the culture here, or have you just given up?
I don't feel like I've ever really fit in. I'm married to a Brazilian, and we talk about you guys all the time.
OK, good. Monday's Daily Star now. And Scott, you may not be interested in the positions that she takes during her day job, but what do you think of this woman's political position? Whoa, got through that link.
Daily Star, will Daily Star's 60p Tesco lettuce or PM Liz Truss last longer?
Oh, no,
sorry.
This is not. This is about the...
this one.
Yeah.
Oh, Mia Khalifa.
Yeah.
I thought you were skipping it.
You're a big fan of hers.
No, is she a porn star?
Is she? Come on, like you're not. You don't have that on your homepage.
I don't watch. I don't have to. I just said I'm married to a Brazilian, and but yeah, Mia Khalifa fumes over crimes against humanity after Iran, quote unquote, hellhole prison riot. She's an ex-Pornhub star. What's Pornhub? Mia Khalifa has shown support for the Iranian political protesters locked up in the notorious Evin prison after a major fire and riot broke out last night. She's saying, you guys, it's mean. This is really rough, you guys. Come on, don't be so mean.
You're watching a different clip.
She said support. She said support those guys. It's a crime against humanity that you're hurting them and burning them and blowing them up. I'm glad she's become aware of it now. Lebanese-American OnlyFans model Mia shared footage on Twitter that appeared to show Iranians blocking the roads to the prison. That's preventing security forces from quelling the uprising.
Well, I think this is genius because, of course, we know that comedy can be quite a good tool for getting across your message. And I don't feel like they've ever really utilised pornography in the same way. What do you think, Steve?
As much as I'm normally willing to do terrible jokes about all the stories, I do think there's a really awkward fit between how serious the story is that she's commenting on, and then the Daily Star goes, who can we get to comment on this story of uprising and civil unrest? Who's the woman from the website that we're all not allowed to look at work, so we use VPNs instead? It's a weird fit.
Is she hot?
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Yeah.
OK, to the Times and the last story. Are we living in the end of times, Steve, when Crocs have become cool again?
Yeah, Croc shoes. For those who don't know, well done, congratulations. They remind me of the jelly mould shoes you used to get in British seaside resorts. Someone took that design, made them a bit thicker, and for a while they were just, if I'm brutally honest, worn by people who let themselves go a little bit towards, we all gain a couple of stone, and they just want comfort, and you just see people wearing those. But now they're trendy. The Gen Z people seem to love them. These shoes have been around for 20 years. They're having a second wind. They look horrible, don't they? Am I not the only person who looks at them and just thinks, this looks like you're going to...
They're really great if you live on a small farm and you have to go out and get the eggs and milk the cows in the morning, and you don't want to put your shoes all the way on, because they're plastic, rubber, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're great for that. But no, for urban environment, no, I think they're horrible. No.
They're not biodegradable.
Terrible.
But they are very cool. My son, my 13-year-old, very hip son, has gone out and bought a pair of Crocs, and he swears that they're the coolest thing.
You let that kid get away with anything, don't you?
You've got enough kids to disown him.
Yeah, you do.
You think so? OK, well, we'll see.
What colour are they?
They're like black and white and sort of mixed match. They do look pretty cool on him, to be fair. I ain't getting away with it.
Anything looks cool on a 13-year-old, because they're 13.
Yeah, he's got his whole life ahead of him.
Does he not look like a hotel porter? Or maybe...
But that's the dream.
Oh, right, good.
Okay.
You've given him a lot of aspiration, haven't you? That's what he's shooting
That's
for.
exactly what I'm going for, the hotel porter. So maybe, you know, I'm hoping then one day he can start hanging out with old ladies and playing tennis with them. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, guys. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much to my fantastic guests, Steve N. Allen and Scott Capurro. Headliners will be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Andrew Doyle, myself, and without a tie, Nick Dixon. Good night. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate, and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for big guests, big opinions, and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate, and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for big guests, big opinions, and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to this very special edition of Free Speech Nation. This week we're coming to you live from the Battle of Ideas at Church House in Westminster. The Battle of Ideas is an annual event, a whole weekend of debate with over 400 different visiting speakers from all political affiliations, from the left, from the right and everywhere in between, and they're discussing all of the major topics that affect our society today. It's not just about cancel culture and free speech, it's also about the economy, about architecture, the arts, the media, education, pretty much everything.
I mean, I think it's just such a fantastic event each year. I mean, right now, as we've just been talking about, free speech is under threat in so many aspects of public life. And to have a space where it's allowed, in which the public are respected and valued to actually engage in civil discourse and disagreement in an important and challenging way is so valuable.
Hello. Hi. How are you? How are you doing? You all right? See you later. Hello. Hello. Okay, we're just wandering through the labyrinth that is Church House, Battle of Ideas. They've basically occupied the whole building, so they've got various sessions going on in every different room, every nook and cranny, which means it's easy to get lost. I mean, you sort of expect a minotaur to appear somewhere in the middle, but it's fine. I'm on top of it. I'm a professional. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Don't Divide Us and what it's for and what message you're trying to get out there?
The main message we're trying to get is that what we do all have differences, but if we forget that our common humanity is indivisible, and we let that slip and become less important or reject it outright, then we risk losing a really precious cultural resource for everybody.
Graham Norton recently made the point that cancel culture should be called accountability. Do you think he's got a point?
No, of course not. I mean, cancel culture is a vague phrase, I know that, and everything gets called cancel culture or woke or whatever, you know. But there's a real thing here, which is there are people who are losing their jobs, or behind the scenes they take, an HR, a complaint on their HR file in work, which means like first and final warning. And there's people who are being tried to be unpersoned, you know. Like if you aren't able to earn a living anywhere because you've been declared outside of polite society, I mean, this is something that we haven't seen for decades, this sort of treatment, and that's cancellation. It's not accountability to be unemployable, to be silenced, to be shunned, to be called a Nazi, any of those things, and that's what happens.
I really enjoyed your book, Andrew. New Puritans.
I didn't even tell him to say that.
Read his book. It's fantastic.
I promise.
I think there is a kind of authoritarianism of the left which hates proper debate, because it allows us to interrogate ideas and come across good or better solutions.
Well, we're just going to weave our way through here, trying to grab another unsuspecting person, a victim, you might say. Harry Miller, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew.
And so, why are you here today?
Well, I'm here as usual because I like the whole idea of ideas. I like the whole idea of battling ideas, but specifically, I'm here banging the drum for the Bad Law Project, continuing to drum up support to hold policing to account and to hold our institutions which have been politically corrupted by ideology to account. That's what we're here for.
Do you want to tell people what Sex Matters is all about and why it's important?
Sex Matters is the campaign for clarity on sex in law and policy in the UK. It's a really just basic freedom of speech, freedom of expression, to be able to say that your mum's not your dad, that a man isn't a woman. It's basic
Just
as
to
that.
tell the truth, effectively?
Yes.
Why have you come to the Battle of Ideas?
Because I believe in the protection of free speech and open dialogue and open discussion, and right now we really are seeming to be missing that in contemporary society, especially in the literary world, in the academic world, and it seems in even the social sector as well. So I really do think that this kind of thing is important.
Okay, we're just going through, this is the gift shop area, I think. You can buy all sorts of tokens and trinkets relating to free speech. And books, of course. My book's on sale, so... I'm here with Claire Fox, Director of the Academy of Ideas, and of course, the Battle of Ideas is your baby.
Well, God, yeah, it's getting old now. I mean, I've got a teenager, you know, this is the 17th Battle of Ideas Festival. But goodness me, it feels like we need it this year. I mean, the mess that politics is in at the moment, I feel getting people together to kickstart a new kind of politics is rather important.
It is rather important, and looking around, it looks like people are responding. It's very, very busy here today, you know.
It's very busy, bigger than it's been before, and also great for me, as far as I'm concerned, lots and lots of young people.
Yes, I noticed, yeah.
I'm not trying to fetishise young people, but there's nothing worse than kind of talking to one's own generation.
No, absolutely.
And kind of bemoaning the state of the world. So to have so many young people engaged, disagreeing with each other, I mean, not all of one voice, is essential.
Welcome to this very special edition of Free Speech Nation. This week we're coming to you live from the Battle of Ideas at Church House in Westminster. The Battle of Ideas is an annual event, a whole weekend of debate with over 400 different visiting speakers from all political affiliations, from the left, from the right and everywhere in between, and they're discussing all of the major topics that affect our society today. It's not just about cancel culture and free speech, it's also about the economy, about architecture, the arts, the media, education, pretty much everything.
I mean, I think it's just such a fantastic event each year. I mean, right now, as we've just been talking about, free speech is under threat in so many aspects of public life. And to have a space where it's allowed, in which the public are respected and valued to actually engage in civil discourse and disagreement in an important and challenging way is so valuable.
Hello. Hi. How are you? How are you doing? You all right? See you later. Hello. Hello. Okay, we're just wandering through the labyrinth that is Church House, Battle of Ideas. They've basically occupied the whole building, so they've got various sessions going on in every different room, every nook and cranny, which means it's easy to get lost. I mean, you sort of expect a minotaur to appear somewhere in the middle, but it's fine. I'm on top of it. I'm a professional. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Don't Divide Us and what it's for and what message you're trying to get out there?
The main message we're trying to get is that what we do all have differences, but if we forget that our common humanity is indivisible, and we let that slip and become less important or reject it outright, then we risk losing a really precious cultural resource for everybody.
Graham Norton recently made the point that cancel culture should be called accountability. Do you think he's got a point?
No, of course not. I mean, cancel culture is a vague phrase, I know that, and everything gets called cancel culture or woke or whatever, you know. But there's a real thing here, which is there are people who are losing their jobs, or behind the scenes they take, an HR, a complaint on their HR file in work, which means like first and final warning. And there's people who are tried to be unpersoned, you know. Like if you aren't able to earn a living anywhere because you've been declared outside of polite society, I mean, this is something that we haven't seen for decades, this sort of treatment, and that's cancellation. It's not accountability to be unemployable, to be silenced, to be shunned, to be called a Nazi, any of those things, and that's what happens.
I really enjoyed your book, Andrew. New Puritans.
I didn't even tell him to say that.
Read his book. It's fantastic.
I promise.
I think there is a kind of authoritarianism of the left which hates proper debate because it allows us to interrogate ideas and come across good or better solutions.
Right, we're just going to weave our way through here, trying to grab another unsuspecting person, a victim, you might say. Harry Miller, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew.
And so, why are you here today?
Well, I'm here as usual because I like the whole idea of ideas. I like the whole idea of battling ideas, but specifically I'm here banging the drum for the Bad Law Project, continue to drum up support to hold policing to account and to hold our institutions which have been politically corrupted by ideology to account. That's what we're here for.
Do you want to tell people what Sex Matters is all about and why it's important?
Sex Matters is the campaign for clarity on sex in law and policy in the UK. It's a really just basic freedom of speech, freedom of expression, to be able to say that your mum's not your dad, that a man isn't a woman. It's basic
Just
as that.
to tell the truth, effectively?
Yes.
Why have you come to the Battle of Ideas?
Because I believe in the protection of free speech and open dialogue and open discussion, and right now we really are seeming to be missing that in contemporary society, especially in the literary world, in the academic world, and it seems in even the social sector as well. So I really do think that this kind of thing is important.
Okay, we're just going through, this is the gift shop area, I think. You can buy all sorts of tokens and trinkets relating to free speech. And books, of course. My book's on sale, so... I'm here with Claire Fox, Director of the Academy of Ideas, and of course, the Battle of Ideas is your baby.
Well, God, yeah, it's getting old now. I mean, I've got a teenager, you know, this is the 17th Battle of Ideas Festival. But goodness me, it feels like we need it this year. I mean, the mess that politics is in at the moment, I feel getting people together to kickstart a new kind of politics is rather important.
It is rather important, and looking around, it looks like people are responding. It's very, very busy here today. You know?
It's very busy. bigger than it's been before, and also great for me, as far as I'm concerned, lots and lots of young people.
Yes, I noticed, yeah.
I'm not trying to fetishise young people, but there's nothing worse than kind of talking to one's own generation.
No, absolutely.
And kind of bemoaning the state of the world. So to have so many young people engaged, disagreeing with each other, I mean, not all of one voice, is essential.
Welcome, everyone, to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, here live at the Battle of Ideas at Church House in Westminster. As you all know, the Battle of Ideas has a motto, and the motto is Free Speech Allowed, which, as you all probably know, is a fascist dog whistle. Well, some people seem to think so, and, you know, this, for instance, I'll just give you an example. This was one Guardian writer, I'm not going to name names, Owen Jones, said this... said, for some people, free speech is nothing more than a political ploy, a ruse, a term the far right willfully abuse to spread hatred. So we do have a struggle on our hands. Increasingly, free speech is being perceived as a specifically right-wing issue. But of course, it should be non-partisan. It should be something that we can all agree on. And I hope that we in this room can agree on that as well. And this is affecting everyone, particularly in the arts and in comedy especially. We've seen comedians having their shows cancelled. You will have noticed that Jerry Sadowitz had his show cancelled at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival this year. For those of you who don't know, Jerry Sadowitz is one of the most offensive comedians in the world, but he advertises his show as such. There are all these warnings. I saw a show of his which was called Jerry Sadowitz Comedian Psychopath, right? So he's not being subtle there. The last show that got cancelled at the Edinburgh Fringe was called Jerry Sadowitz Not For Anyone. So... it's not as though he was trying to pass himself off as a Pam Ayres tribute act, right? People knew what they were getting in for. So this is very serious when it comes to comedy. But people seem to think genuinely now that they think that comedy needs to be regulated. They think that if jokes aren't carefully controlled, they might spiral out of control. Because let's not forget that Al-Qaeda started life as an improvisational sketch group. But we're not going to be offensive tonight. Someone on Twitter called me homophobic the other day. Definitely not homophobic. Most of the men I've slept with have been gay. I don't have a problem with it. But on that theme, we're going to introduce to the stage my panel today, and if you've seen the show before, you will know that I always have comedian panellists because they work for less. And so, I'm delighted to introduce today's panellists, Josh Howie and Leo Kearse. Welcome to the show. Do you feel there's an issue in comedy? I mean, you've had some of your shows cancelled. You had a show in Australia pulled because you were accused of transphobia, even though the show was co-written by a trans person.
Yeah, who I was dating at the time.
Such a transphobe. Yeah, but that's the perfect cover, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what you were doing.
But yesterday I had a UK tour pulled because they couldn't get me booked into venues. So the venues have got these gatekeepers, these sort of milk monitors, who are on minimum wage, but have decided that they are moral arbiters and can decide what people are exposed to, what horrific comedy they're exposed to. And they said that, you know, I'm racist, transphobic, homophobic, and all the rest of it, which I am, but it's funny. So...
I mean... people think it's not happening. This is the thing, you know. And you know, a lot of comedians I know, they get complaints from members of staff who try and get the show pulled, and it is a common thing now, right?
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Josh, have you ever experienced this?
Yeah, I'm actually quite lucky because I have had shows cancelled before this whole furore about free speech just for not being funny. So I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I remember about 10 years ago I had this whole bit about not wanting to be perceived as being racist on the bus and all the ridiculous steps I took. And someone in the audience was drunk and just heard certain key words, and they'd sent an email in to complain, and this was forwarded to me, and and luckily I taped it, and I sort of wrote the whole bit out, and I said, I remember you were really drunk and abusive, and this is what the piece is, and this is what I'm explaining, and all this stuff. And then they came back to me and said, oh yeah, I see that, but you don't need to be so aggressive about it. And it's like, you're literally trying to get me fired here.
Yeah. It's a very strange thing, isn't it? I had a gig I did in a... you know, because sometimes people get offended for all sorts of reasons. I did a gig at the Stand in Newcastle, I think, and they were offended because I was gay. So they had complaints to the venue saying, you need less gays. And I was actually offended because that should be fewer gays, shouldn't it? Because that bothers me more, is the misuse of the English language.
Like, I had to dump my last boyfriend because he couldn't spell parallelogram. It's like, I'm not having that.